is throwing me for a loop. I don't know if it's raining or shining or, will be 180 degrees or 20 degrees. But I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed these past few days, which we've been getting a little bit more mild weather than we were anticipating. So it's good to be with you all here today. We've got a lot to converse about. There's a lot that has been going on, a lot that is happening, and we're going to get in the mix. You guys know we often start this program out, and I'll share with you what's on my mind. I want to give a shout out. There's so many things that have been happening, Rob, with friends and family. I want to give a shout out to a number of families, the Pryor family, and the loss of my dear friend Vonda Pryor. She passed away this past week, and her services will be this coming weekend. And so, hello, dear friend. We love you. We miss you. We pray that the family would be strengthened in everything that's going on. And then also the Dent family, another friend of the family, Jackie Dent, passed away. There's so many things that have happened since we have last been together. But I just want to give a shout out to those families, and we're praying for your strength and your dexterity as you begin to move forward and just continue to pick up the pieces and those semblances of what life is. So thank you for all that you guys are and your families are and everything that you mean to the communities. All right, so we're going to get into the crux of things. I want to talk about I want to say, first of all, Rob, and you'll be happy to know this, I am officially out of Facebook jail as of this past Saturday. Those of you who have been listening, you'll know that I have been put on lockdown. I could not do any live recordings. So that means no posting from my page or any of the things other than it was something that someone else was managing. But I am officially out of Facebook jail, Rob.
Was that an early release? Because it didn't seem like that long ago.
No, it trust me, it didn't seem that long to you, but there's so many things.
What you pay off to get out of
and you had to make some back.
What do you know?
You have to make some backroom deals to get some things done. But I'm free. And like I told you, they need to get ready because the conversation becomes more intense as we move forward. I told them I'll be quiet, but when I'm free, I'll be talking again. So we are now free. And as a matter of fact, this is a shout out to my guys over at the Big Book. Shortly after they put me in Facebook jail and I was not allowed to go live, they then they had a whistleblower, Rob, that came forth, and that whistleblower said that Facebook knows what they're doing in terms of inciting violence and all of the craziness that's going on, but they capitalize on it, because it's controversy sells. And so now they are finding themselves having to testify in front of Congress, and that same whistleblower will be brought in for this January 6th commission on the insurrection as we begin to get to the details. Now, Rob, are you surprised at anything that you've been finding out as it relates to this whole fiasco with Facebook? And
I've been in Facebook jail a number of times.
Not necessarily Facebook. What you're finding out in terms of insurrection is what I was going to say. The resurrection.
No. As a matter of fact, I expected a lot of it. I expected a lot of pushback and denials and things of that sort. This is just par for the course of how conspiracies and how people who are not really patriots work, in my view. And it could have been the Democratic Party as it is the Republican Party. I'm not surprised. I am just shocked and I'm appalled because of the country that I served in. I just served in back in 1979 for 20 years. It's not the same country that I hope it will be for my son. I know some changes will have to happen, but I hope we become more progressive. That's why I look so fondly to what was happening during the Obama administration. Whether you like Obama or not is irrelevant. It's just that a lot of things he did progressively was taking the country forward. That's what I want to see us go forward. Compared to where I've lived in Canada and overseas, we're behind, so far behind.
Look at you, international world traveler.
Well, thanks to the Navy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but I'm just kind of thinking, we're not amazed that President Trump is not as rich as he thought as he says that he is. We're not amazed that he's been lying about a number of things.
No.
But this is all a part of the process, and so we're learning more. And we talked a while ago during the election about the emoluments clause,
right? And
how there has never been a situation where a president has not removed himself from the day-to-day runnings of his business, and certainly was not going to profit during his time in office.
Right.
We have found that was not the case with this particular president. and that he made, millions of dollars from foreign leaders. So now it's time to find out what those millions of dollars provided those foreign leaders in exchange. So there's a lot that's going on. I'm excited. But I want to tell you, man,
it's going to come out there because President Biden said no to the executive privilege thing that he wanted to hide.
Absolutely. But I'll tell you what's exciting is what's exciting is that we're moving into another election cycle, and the crazy man himself is back on the stump. He was in Iowa this past weekend, sold out crowds, and announcing the fact once again that the election was rigged. He made a differentiation between himself and Hillary Clinton, why he should still be president and why he should still be allowed, because he did not concede. She conceded. He did not. The election was rigged. But then he unveils a major campaign slogan as we move forward. And that slogan is "Make America Great Again." I don't know what to do, but what I can say is that he has a certain star power that the media loves, because since his presidency and his leaving, he has been in the news every single day, controlling the dialogue and the conversation that we are hearing in our news media outlets. All right, so enough of that. COVID numbers are on the decline, y'all. I'm excited about this. We are continually going down.
In Michigan or
across nationwide.
Oh, really?
And so we're doing extremely well. We're about 59% of our population is vaccinated. I think a little that spike, because I didn't think we were going to get up to the 50% mark.
I think it's 64.
You're 60. Maybe you're probably right now.
64.
But those mandates, you won't hold a government job if you're not mandated, if you don't get the vaccination. Some people don't like those things, but I say, hey, the way that we kicked out other things like smallpox and polio and all of these other things was through the process of vaccination. So if you have not been vaccinated, we need you to do your civic duty. I think it is a patriotic thing to do, to get vaccinated. I don't mind telling people that. I didn't feel that way initially, but since it has been a great process, very minimal after effects, life has been good, families protected. And now with these numbers going down, I'm feeling that I feel a lot better being in a part of the community and seeing people in the community and engaging. But we cannot let our guards down, because we know that this is flu season. And this is a pandemic, especially this Delta variant that thrives on people coming together and being in close proximity.
On that note, we should point out that according to the CDC, and even I myself checked with the Veterans Administration, if you choose to get the flu shot, it will not affect the COVID vaccine shot that you have. The two are separate. As a matter of fact, if anything, it will help a great deal.
Yep.
So just check with your doctor or your physician to make sure.
Now, Rob, I got to ask you this question. What about this booster shot? Well, you don't have.
Well, the VA, I got a letter from the VA or an email from the VA said that they approved the booster for Pfizer,
right,
but not have yet received a booster authorization from the CDC. They did apply for that, not the VA, but the CDC checked on that. And so we're still waiting to see how that will work for the Johnson or the Janssen shot.
Well, the good thing about it, the Johnson and the Moderna, they seem to have the retaining their dexterity,
right,
so they're not diminishing. However, right, those of you like myself, Pfizer, who is so excited to get Pfizer, in terms of serious case of illness and death, it is holding strong, but some of the efficacy is dwindling. So if you are out there, you have pre-existing conditions. This aligns with a number of people. You have some issues with diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer survivor, and your makeup. Absolutely. Right. You may need to get a booster. And so I think, hey, that's the news. That's where we are. I need you guys to lean in. Let's stop being crazy with, all of these conspiracy theories and everything else. Let's get this vaccination. Let's push forward so we can put this pandemic behind us. All right. So I want you guys to know, as I told you, I reached out to our mayor and our city manager, and I told you that I would keep you abreast of that. I have given them 3 days, 3 different dates that they were, able to come in and sit into the studio. Actually, they're able to come in any particular Sunday from 6 to 7. I've extended that. They've received it. I have had no word of a confirmed date, but I will continue to do so. And I'm going to let you know, one way that we're going to come in and talk about what's going to go on with that $52 million plus dollars in the ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act. All right. So we're going to keep them honest on that one. There is a young man, Kevin Jones, who has done something, Rob. He did something really amazing, quite amazing over the course of the summer. he had something called the Black Teaking Experience. And so he basically rented a house, out of his own pocket. And it was, big older home. And he just had all of these, probably, I guess, $600,000 to $800,000 worth of Black artifacts, little caricatures, dolls, and all of those things. And he put them on the display. Absolutely amazing. He is now, and I want the community to be aware, he is now looking for the space to call home for this amazing. You're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of artifacts and little dolls.
Is he local?
He's local.
You should check the Saginaw Art Museum.
Well, there's a conversation to be had there, because whenever we do something in our community and we take something in, having ownership and being able to tell the story of those artistic pieces is going to be very important. And sometimes people don't want to necessarily let go of their space until they can control what it is that you're presenting. So we're working on some things as it relates to that, because he does have something that would be an amazing display for the entire community to come out. This is the kind of stuff where, it's historical. He can tell you the history behind every single piece, what it means, where it comes from. The original Betty Boop, we talked about it on this show, how there was a jazz singer, Betty Boop, that was actually the muse for the concept of Betty Boop. Betty Boop. A white woman was given that credit until digging deeper and finding out this historical information. But he has one of the original figurines of this, and he's able to tell you the story of what this was, where he got it, and all of the history that's attached to it.
So I'm thinking the Saginaw Museum and the Castle Museum, because those areas there are known, at least from my experience of living here in Saginaw, show things like that. Maybe.
No, absolutely. I think for a temporary exhibit, but I think they need a home, because what we've been talking about, and this is conversation that's been on social media, is really creating a space. And this is something, when you go to big cities, they have cultural centers. They have, African American cultural centers, African cultural centers. And I think it's about time we here in Saginaw, we get a little highfalutin and we create a space where we can showcase those things. So when we look at things like Black History coming up and Juneteenth happening and different things that are part, or even just gathering spaces to tell our story or to put our art and our talents on display.
Saginaw Art Festival we had.
Absolutely. These are great places for us to look in. So I think what he has is really the foundational pieces of creating an African American Museum of History. And so his name is Kevin Jones. Check him out on Facebook. He put some of those things up. These things are getting ready to be packed up and put away in storage. It is a shame that this information is going to be packed up in storage. And so we as a community need to come together. If you know something that I don't know, reach out to me. There is a place of interest that I think would be an amazing space for this to take place. So we're going to look into that. But Kevin Jones, I want to give you a shout out. You get the Black History Award, the crown today, not the clown crown, but the real crown, the king crown, for your efforts in keeping Black culture alive.
Thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't know anything about that.
Many people did not. And so when I found out, I was like, this is absolutely amazing. So I'm in the hunt. And if you're out there and you're part of the community and you say, hey, this is an amazing space, ideally, for those of you who are listening, and I don't, this was not my intention, but I think that this is something, as you can tell, Rob, it has sparked my interest because it is what we talk about.
Right.
These are intricate and very important pieces of the village that are heirlooms that we need to keep in our community. Right. Because I could literally see schools bringing their entire populations in a space where we could learn about the rich history that is attached to these images. When you talk about having individuals in blackface and being able to see jockeys that were on the front, all of this tells a story of who we are as a people and where we have come. And so it's important for us to share that as monuments or memorials in the ears of our young people, so that we don't lose our history. All right, so we're going to continue forward. We're going to make that happen. We're going to continue forward in La Palma, the volcano in the Canary Islands. Rob, I watched that thing, I think probably for hours on one of the science channels. There were lava bursts that were coming out really the size of buildings that they're shooting and it's spewing. Now it is both beautiful and horrific at the same time. Because when this lava hits the water, there will be a series of very toxic fumes and gases that will be released that are going to be detrimental to the atmosphere. But this is nature at its finest. This is what happens. This is how we get those islands that we think are so beautiful. On Canary Islands, when you look, I've been there. I was there shortly after high school, and they have black sandy beaches, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So they have white houses in the sides of mountains, which are black sandy beaches, and it was just a beautiful spectacle. But this is nature at its finest, and it's amazing to see it at its in its all of its glory. But hey, you know, this is what happens when we inhabit places that we are not supposed to be. You know, we have to deal with these things. Mission in the City, Rob. I am so geeked about this. I know that I think Joyce. Hey, Joyce, how you doing? Hope you're listening on your way home. Shout out. I was listening to you on the radio on my way in. But you and Mr. Martin, I believe he was in the studio with her on today.
Right.
And I know that he's been involved. He and Karen Lawrence Webster. I know that doctors Tom and Brenda, excuse me, Coughlin, and that was not on cue, but Brenda Coughlin. It just happened that way. They were here and they were talking about, hey, that's real life. They were all a part of what was going on in the city of Saginaw. And over the course of the past week, they have instituted and they did the grand opening for the McNair Coughlin, what do you call it, chess park. Mm-hmm. So there's a chess park, and I went by there today, and I was so impressed.
Awesome. And if you play chess, it's awesome.
It was what I love about this, and this is what I want to say about those individuals, because I know the late Reverend Bradley was a part of the Mission in the City concept, and they're continuing on with his legacy. If you go down 6th, if you're near 6th Street and Jane, right there across from the Stop and Shop or whatever it might be called right now, on that corner, there were those very nice basketball courts that were put up. Now there is a chess park, which is bar none. What impressed me was the level of expertise and excellence that they put into doing this. And this was absolutely amazing. And I know, you know, Saginaw Community Foundation has been working with the Mission in the City for some time. So I want to give a shout out to all of you. I know the Saginaw Economic Development Corporation is probably a part of that process. It is absolutely amazing. So if you're hearing me and you're driving down and you're anywhere near 6th Avenue on the pier, and you have an opportunity, you get just take a couple seconds and drive through there and see, because if you don't play chess, it will inspire you to at least get a clue as to what it's about. Right. And I can imagine some of those young men who are playing basketball could just meander right on over to the chess field. And there are like really human-sized chess pieces that are out there, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, with some other chess boards where people can sit and learn. And I'm hoping that we will have some other individuals in the community who love to play chess would then just go and play chess in that park.
Do you play chess?
You know what? I'm a checkers kind of guy. I play chess when it comes to business, but when it comes to the actual game, why do you have to ask me that question?
Because I'm thinking, you took me back to, I learned when I was 9 years old. I was playing checkers up to that point, but once I saw chess being played in a history class when I was passing it by one,
yes,
the teacher pulled me in and said, "Gerald, you want to come in and learn this game?" Because I didn't know what those pieces were.
Now
I can't play checkers now. I can play chess up the butt, but I cannot play checkers at all.
I just like to say king, maybe that's why I like to play chess.
I like to say checkmate.
But checkmate, no. And I've tried. So I've looked at the bishop and the rook and all of the knights. And I've looked at them, so I know the kinds of moves that they can make.
You called them correct. You just said castle and horse.
No, I do. I have taken the time, because I really have tried, Rob. I don't know if I'm slow. I'm kind of concerned about going back, because I think I'm a little slow when it comes to learning games.
You can learn chess.
But what I did know is I learned those moves, and I understand that, but I'm just not sure what the boundaries are and when I can move and those kind of things. And really understanding the strategy. And chess is a game of strategy. You've heard people say, listen, you're playing checkers, and I'm playing chess. I want to make them chess moves. So I'm going to have to get over to the park. So maybe some of these young kids, because there are some amazing young kids that I know that were out there. But I'm impressed in watching them play, but I've never really taken the time to sit down and learn. I'm going to learn how to play chess. Do you all hear me? So let's learn how to play chess together. We can go over to the McNair Coughlin Chess Park and do so. Dr. Tom and Brenda Coughlin. She's over at Great Lakes Bay Health Centers, I think it is, as their executive director or one of the directors over there. So great job. Kudos on a job well done. It was excellent, bar none. And continuing on, what my last conversation piece for really what's on my mind. So y'all can tell there was a lot that was on my mind. Is the Dow Treasure Academy. Rob, we are locked and loaded. We have been working with the Saginaw Board of Education, with Saginaw School Board, working with Dr. Roberts and Dr. Mitt over there, and all of the individuals that are part of the school. And we have been putting together a curriculum and putting pieces in place and working with corporations. And so the Treasure Academy is really set to launch. It's ready to go. I am so super duper stoked about what's getting ready to happen. The radio station here, Alpha Media, is a partner to that. We're going to bring some students, some young people into the studio, show them how media works. And for those of you listening, it's important for our young people to understand media, because media it controls the images, the voices that are heard on the radio. As you told me, and I didn't know this, over at WSGW, I'm the first African-American voice that's been on the radio over on there. So we're breaking as a host. So we're breaking ground, doing these things. And our young people need to be, they need to know who Byron Allen is.
Oh, yes.
And, because he's a media mogul and no one knows who he is. But we're going to give them an opportunity to come in. I want to thank Mark Thomas for coming in and allowing this to happen. And so I'm excited. Yvonne, we're going to get everyone involved. Allow them to see that little brown girl or that grown black woman on the radio, the afternoon girlfriend, and myself and you, Rob.
And talking about Yvonne Davis, our program and content director, and Mark Thomas, who's our general manager.
Thank you. And they're gonna, give them an amazing experience, and who knows, we may spark them to be in media and entertainment in some way or form. So that is all that's on my mind. Some of y'all say, how do you walk around with all that stuff on your mind? I do it. Trust me, I really do. When we were last together, we were having a conversation, and something has happened that I think we got to stick in that vein, because I didn't completely finish that conversation when we were talking about the voting rights being endangered, Rob, and what's going on. And we have seen a continual chess game that has been in operation as it relates to everything that was going on. The last we were together, I gave you guys a timeline of things that were taking place from the beginning with Reconstruction to December 1863. And we literally went through a timeline of events, with the amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th amendments being passed. And we were having this conversation about why it is important for our voting rights. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to jump back in that conversation, because something is happening here in Michigan that impacts your voting rights. We want to know what's going on. Stay tuned.
So powerful. You could look dirty dishes in the dishwasher without.
So I have to get you off with that because that is a sock and cough.
Now I don't have to cough anymore around. All right, so let me.
Oh, your mom's on.
Yeah, I'm going to get online because I can't see who's on, because I decided to come in directly on.
Donald or Daryl Newton.
Daryl Newton?
Daryl, just like D-A-R-O-D. D-A-R-O-L-D, Newton.
All right.
Says, keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. Rebecca's having it in your back, and your mom is watching.
Ah, yes, I'm back. Beware, beware.
Got the itinerary, thanks. You need to bring that up about the African thing on your next show, Wednesday.
Yes.
Everybody's here, there's those people over there.
Don't mind me, just sneaking out to go to Kohl's. Deals right now? Too good to pass up. Like up to 40% off Cuddlebedd's bedding, up to 50% off the cheapest health part, and 25% off the ticket to the wine booth. How can I resist? 30% off. I'm going all in for fall, and I can't even wait. Next time, offers and
30 seconds.
What's going on, everybody that's listening to me in the Saginaw Bay area, the Michigan Bay region? We're so excited that you have tuned in to another prolific conversation that we're going to have. We call it Straight Talk. You may call it the radio, but I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. And those of you who are listening, I want you to know that you can catch us a number of ways. If you heard this conversation, said, hey, you're getting ready to talk about part 2 of this Dangers of Voting Rights Act. I didn't hear part 1. You can go to kisswtlz.com. And you can listen to the former broadcast. It is in podcast form right there. That one and all of the other messages and hours of conversation that we have had over the past weeks. And so I want you to get that information. I want to give a shout out to all of you that are listening via social media on Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen via social media. I want you guys to go to my YouTube channel because we're getting ready to move to YouTube. And that is Kareem Bowen I Grow Daily. And you can go right here to Kiss 107.1 WTLZ on Facebook Live and hear these conversations. We are going to get into Village. It's time for us to kind of come together. You know, we were talking about what do we do after a pandemic. One thing that we don't allow is that the leverage that we gained during the pandemic and in the midst of the fight to be lost. And I tell you that we stand to have that very thing happen with us. And I want to make sure that that does not happen. That's why I want to make sure that we keep you informed. Straight Talk is about giving it to you straight, no filter, no chasers, getting to the heart of the matter. All right. So as we listen to our conversation on today and we get involved with what it is that we're talking about, on last week, we ended our conversation talking about what took place. We talked about Bloody Sunday, and we know the late civil rights activist, John, come on now, John, help me, Lewis. I was struggling here for a second. I had a brain freeze. We talked about John Lewis, the late John Lewis, and he talked about getting in some, good necessary trouble, some good trouble. We ended with talking about Johnson signing the Voting Rights Act into law, and he enshrined the 14th and the 15th Amendment. This was a watershed piece of federal legislation that prohibiting racial discrimination in voting, basically at the polls. All right, July 27, 2006. Now we're in this neck of the woods in the past 10, 20, 30 years, and we're looking at this, and voting rights extension of the VRA, President George W. Bush signed legislation extending the VRA, the Voting Rights Act, for an additional 25 years. This is what I was saying about some of these things need to be done once and for all. There needs to be some permanency so we wouldn't have to continually have to deal with people giving extensions. I hate for people to have to give me an extension because one day they may not feel like they want to extend anything, Rob. And I think that we're moving in that direction, all right? So that means that the right of the ordinary men and women to determine their own political future lies at the heart of the American experience. We now, our freedoms of voting now are in the hands of this democracy. This is why when we talk about the insurrection and what I call the illustrated coup that took place on January 6th is so important because it was an overthrowing of an attempt to overthrow our democratic process. In a democracy, we need that each party understands that the voting process is the most sacred part of our existence as a democracy. Without our truth in the voting process, Rob, we lose what we are as a democracy. And it is such a thinly veiled agreement or process that it's important for us to make sure that when you lose, accept the lose, do your concession speech and walk away. And hint, hint, and that goes out to no particular pardon, number 45. But anyways, I digress. June 25th, 2013, the court decides in Shelby County versus Holder, it was a 5-4 decision that defanged the VRA by freeing jurisdictions with histories. Now listen to this. With histories of racial discrimination in voting from having to gain federal approval, and this was when we were talking about pre-clearance, before changing their election laws. So now we've removed this from federal jurisdiction and we're giving it to the hands of what's happening. So when we look at states like Texas and we look at Florida and Georgia and some of these northern states, I think it's Wyoming and Iowa, these are states that are now able to change their voting rights, subtle changes that they can change without having to pass this by the federal government. This was something that took place. It's called a pre-clearance, and this began June 25th, 2013. You better understand why this happened. It happened because there was a need for to begin to create a situation to keep certain folks from voting. It's called disenfranchising them from the voting process, Rob. What are you going to say, Rob?
No, I was going to say now we're in a mess because the states now have control to do what they want to do. Now
Absolutely.
Reverse this whole thing again.
Absolutely. So now, December 2019, December 6th, Pearl Harbor is what? December 7th? Rob, you're a vet. So a day before Pearl Harbor, the Democratic-led House passes H.R. 4, also called Voting Rights Act. H.R. 4 would revise parts of the Voting Rights Act that were gutted as a result of that 2013 Shelby County decision. H.R. 4 wasn't brought up for a vote in the Senate, which at the time was controlled by the Republicans. Your good old man, Mitch McConnell, was in control. We cannot get away from him. He is like that nagging pain in the back of your throat that you can't get to, or that headache that you can't scratch, you can't touch. Once again, and so it never came up for a vote when it had been introduced to Congress. November, and I'm getting through these because there is a conversation at the end that is directly in line with Michigan. This is not around the world. It's not across the country. It's right in our backyard. That's taking place November 7th, 2020. Democratic candidate Joe Biden wins the presidential election. Immediately after, not long after that, Biden's projected win, Republican Donald Trump and his allies began pushing baseless claims of mass voter fraud. This is why this is so important, including cities like Atlanta, Detroit, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, cities that are majority Black or have sufficient or significant Black populations in them. And the explicit message was that certain votes shouldn't count. That's what the story was. We saw Stacey Abrams do an amazing job in Georgia, coalescing the community, the village, getting us together, bringing us and making us a part of this process, finding out what were the legalities for people to vote. If you've been in prison, do you have the right to vote or not? All of those things that often come up. She laid it out very plain and clear. She got over 1 million people registered to vote that should have been a part of the voting population that felt disenfranchised or apathetic toward the whole process. Right, we talked about it. She got them involved, and her efforts turned Georgia for the first time from red to blue. And so this was problematic because we saw those types of things taking place across the world because we have decided that we were going to exercise our power to vote. We couldn't take another 4 years, no 4 more years. We saw in Texas a close margin where Democrats have never been that close in the state of Texas in terms of winning a presidential election. So go ahead, Rob.
But we can't ignore the fact that 2020 was unique because of the George Floyd situation.
Absolutely.
When the attention got to being more of Black people being shot, Breonna Taylor, who is still on my mind, George
still needs justice. Say her name.
All that was going on, I think a lot of that helped. So we can't dismiss. I'm not saying we dismissed it, but I'm saying we have to make sure that helped also, bring attention to what's going on in our society. That's what I'm, Well,
I mean, 2020 was definitely, it was a tipping point for many of us of who are part of the Black community, who are part of the village, because we talked about it, and we've talked about this on several occasions. We were dealing with a number of crises. We talked about COVID. There was a healthcare crisis. There was a financial crisis.
It was a perfect storm.
It was a perfect storm. And so I think the George Floyd moment, when all of America was captivated, the only reason it became the moment that it was, and there are just certain moments in time that you can't plan for. It was because we were in the crux of several crises happening all at the same time. People were not moving and they were not working. They couldn't turn the TV. But this took center stage because we were locked at home and we were a captive audience.
That's up what you said earlier about the power of media.
Absolutely.
Because had we not, the media we have today with radio, TV, the internet, if this whole thing had happened years ago, we'd be a completely different country.
You wouldn't have seen it on TV.
No.
It's just like all of the things that happen at white universities that never get publicized, but we see universities like Howard and Spelman, they're broadcast across because it's the control of the media. And so anyways, we see all these things happening. George, we saw Raphael Warnock now and John Ossoff, both Democrats, were declared winners in Georgia's January 5th runoff elections. Uh, there were so many things that were happening, and off of the back of this social cry for social justice and social reform, we as a community, strictly, we were tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired. We had had enough, and we took that energy to the polls. Now, this is why it's important for us to continue this conversation, because that energy that we had, sure, we got a changing of the national politics, if you would, the top seat in the nation. It changed it. Now there's a new president. The Democrats, or whoever you believe, whatever. There were a number of progressives that said, "Hey, we need swift and meaningful change." A number of progressives that were put into Congress, really sufficiently in such a way that they are saying, "Listen, if we don't see big change happen, we're not voting for any of your agendas." And we have never seen this before in our nation, where a fraction of, it's almost like another party, but a fraction of the Democratic Party, the progressive, have had such power to be able to make those types of mandates. So we need sweeping change. We've seen what is taking place. We need broadband in the hood. We need health care. We need to shore up Obamacare. We want to bring that legacy moment back and give health care to those millions of individuals. I think 12 million additional people that will be fully covered in the things that they're trying to do. We need some mandates to make sure that we got jobs and roll-ups and all of those things. But we also need to make sure that there is a social package that's attached that addresses the issues of systemic racism. We see the issue of critical race theory coming up, Rob. And here in Michigan, they're trying to vote even to make sure that our teachers can't teach that to our students. For those of you who are out there, Rob, why don't you give them a real quick shot about what critical race theory is? Because it's a whole conversation and a show in itself, and we'll have to do that.
Critical race theory is basically teaching the history of the way white treated minorities, particularly Black people, in the last 400+ years, and talks about the degradation of how prejudice, racial discrimination come around, the treatment of Black people, all the way up to now the present. The whole reason for the civil rights movement was because of what's happening there. So we want to teach that, and if you're not taught that, you go and believe in whatever the history books tell you that's been quote unquote whitewashed.
When our kids hear that there is a tremendous difference, a world of difference when we talk about the wealth gap between Black families and white families, we want to give them a historical perspective as to why these things existed. But this is what we're doing. So when we look at these things, we need to have them explained. When we look at ghettos and we look at, as they call it, quote unquote, ghettos in the hood and different things, there is an explanation as to why things have entered in to the state that they are, and our communities look the way they are. Our communities are depleted. We want to talk about the issues of Tulsa, the Tulsa massacre. We want to talk what happened during the Harlem Renaissance and really give a full spectrum as to why these things existed and why people of color have been treated the way they have over time. And it all is based down to the difference of the color of our skin. All right, so January 6th, we saw these things happening. January 6th happens, and this is why it's so important for us to lean in terms of what's going on, because the moment we as a people, we flipped the presidential election. We took over both the House and the Senate by a slim majority. One with the vice president casting the final, vote to make the decision.
Breaks the tie.
She breaks the tie, absolutely. So we did this. We as a community, we as Black people, we have always been influential in the sway of what happens in the country, but we really showed how we were able to make a difference because, Sleepy Joe, as they called him, was on his way down and out. He was sinking like a torpedo. But down there with our statesman, Mr. Clyburn, he came in and they resurrected, and it was Black men and Black women who made the deciding factor on who was going to be in those key positions to make a change in our nation. So because of that, because you and I and other brown folks across the nation, Black and brown folks across the nation exercise their vote, we see a denial of the results of that election. Why? Because you said that you were tired of more of the same. You were tired of seeing people who were going to be divisive and treat us as if we didn't matter. For you to say to use for our top athletes, get their A's off the field and they ought to be fired in reference to Colin Kaepernick, and his kneeling for the anthem. And who didn't appreciate or understand our culture. Someone who would throw a campaign rally during the celebration or the remembrance of what took place in Black Wall Street in Tulsa, which I still believe is where Herman Cain, one of his staunchest African American supporters, caught COVID and eventually died. No mention of him ever since then, because we are expendable. So expendable, excuse me. So as we look at this is why this is so important for us to vote. So January 6th was all about changing the dynamics, taking away the power of your vote, creating an alternate narrative in terms of whose votes matter and whose votes don't. It was about throwing out millions of votes of folks who were in communities of color, and making sure that their voices were not heard. And when that did not happen, what they could not do legally through the ballot box, they said, then we will do so by force, which is one of the reasons why when we look at places like Gander Mountain and Walmart had to stop selling guns because things had become so divisive during this pandemic that, it wasn't us in there. Now, we got smart because I would see some of my brothers making sure that they were exercising their Second Amendment so that they could protect their home. We were really unsure in terms of what was going to take place because the climate and the temperature of the conversation had gotten beyond anything that we had ever seen before, Rob. So much that they went in, kicked in. This was not a stroll in the park as we're now trying to rewrite history. This was an attempt at a hostile takeover. With nooses included. We understand as a community what nooses mean. Looking for the vice president to kill him and the Speaker of the House to kill her and to shoot her brains out. We have to remember these things because all of these things took place, these vehement, hateful, demeaning things to our nation's most sacred place, our capital. This is the people's house.
See the government.
All of these things took place because you exercised your power to vote. Now, as we continue, we can just continue down that pathway. March 5th, 25th of 2021. That's this year. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, a Republican, signs an anti-voting rights bill into law. You cannot make this stuff up. This is the real deal. SB 202 imposes new voter identification requirements for voter absentee ballots, allows state officials to take over local election boards. It curbs the use of ballot drop boxes and makes it a crime for people who aren't poll workers to approach voters in line to give them food and water. Now, we got to remember what happened in Georgia. We got grandma, auntie, big mom, mama, Nima, everybody out to vote. And in doing so, there were a number of things that they did to accommodate. So they made sure that you didn't leave line because you got hungry. Because in our community, we have medications that we have to take. We can wait in line, but we got to take our medication at a particular time. So if we don't have food or water, then we can't take our medication. Guess what happens?
Heat and whatnot, your diabetes and things of that sort.
That stuff flares out. Absolutely. So they were making accommodations to make sure that every single person who had a desire to vote was given this opportunity to vote. And in doing so, they were doing these things to really accommodate people, which is what we should be doing as a nation, accommodating them so that every vote counted. Now, I would think, Rob, if we are a nation that is governed and we are democratic, that our desire should be that every vote counted. We would go through hell and high water. If we need to do online voting, taking a snapshot of the picture once you vote in front of the camera, we can do these things. Why would we try to do anything to suppress the vote? What would be the reason to suppress the vote, Rob?
You want to win. You want to cheat, by any means necessary,
There is something that has taken place, and this has been happening over the past 30 to 40 years. We refer to it as the browning of America. America is browning, and I'm not just talking, the population of who is an American citizen is changing. We see the influx of individuals from the South on the southern border, with Mexico residents that are coming here claiming asylum and getting citizenship here. We see foreign nationals from other countries, African countries, Afghanistan. There are so many other people that are coming. And this browning of America puts in jeopardy. There's a movie, and I've mentioned this a million times. I tell you guys, you got to go out because this movie speaks to the condition of where I see a lot of, white middle-aged men are. And it is called Falling Down. I think it's Kirk Douglas that was in it. Michael Douglas. Okay.
Michael Douglas and I can't think of the black actor's name right now. I'm looking up for you.
Yeah. So you got to see this movie, Michael Douglas. It's called Falling Down. Samuel Jackson. Yes, this is one of those great movies. And the premise of the movie is that he, as a white man, is used to his white skin privilege, which is something that we talk about. Here we go. I'll see how long I stay out of Facebook jail. We're treading down those waters, and this should not be inflammatory because this is the truth. We see a middle-aged white man who is dealing with the struggles of a changing dynamic in the world around him. His wife is divorcing him for a younger man. He is some of the things that he gets canned on his job. Oh, yes. He assumes that his job has been taken because someone black wanted to get because of affirmative action. This is the thought process. And no, this is not reality, but this is kind of where he's thinking. He looks at the gays. The gays have rights. They're protesting down the street. And he finds himself, in essence, in what I would consider the crux of this surplus store, dealing with someone who's a militiaman. All of these things go on in his life, and basically he feels like a stranger in what he would consider his own land. And the entire movie plays out as an amazing movie, Falling Down. What's his name again? Michael Douglas. And Samuel L. Jackson. All right. So go back, and that's right, the dad is Kurt. So go back and watch this movie, because this movie will give you an eye window. And I think it's a prolific view into where many white Americans feel that they are. The nation's fabric is changing. It's becoming browner and browner. We are seeing, and also one of the things that was they divided the races for so long, where blacks and whites could not date. And now it seems like every time you turn on the TV, there is a blended family on TV. I'm not talking about married blended, but racially blended. There's a black man and a white woman, or vice versa. And these are becoming societal norms. So America is becoming more and more brown, and because of this, the way that they are voting is beginning to skew. So we see these things taking place. That's what Georgia Governor Brian Kemp was doing. It's called "Let's kick out as many votes as we possibly can." We heard number 45, our former president, say, "Hey, can't we get rid of about 1,300 of those votes down there, or fine 1,300? It doesn't matter which ones, because if they can disenfranchise us from the voting process, then we will lose our power of the vote." So May 6, 2021, Florida, and like I said, hey, if it happened in Georgia, here comes Florida. Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis also signs a restrictive voting bill. He does the same thing. We see that go from Florida. Then we saw Texas. Then we saw Wyoming. And there was just a litany, Missouri, and a litany of states that are typically leaning red are trying to ensure that they do not lose any of their voting prowess or their supremacy in those areas. And also, how can we take from these major metropolises votes that don't count? And so those of you who have records, beware, they're going to try to reinstate something. That if you have a felony or you've been incarcerated, they're going to try to strip people of these votes. And so we've got to be aware. Now, if you are here in the state of Michigan and you're listening to this, and I know that we have people that listen to us all over the country and in other countries as well, I need you to lean into what I'm getting ready to share with you, because this is directly impactful to you as a Michigander. The Michigan GOP initiative to restrict voting access gets approval to gather signatures. And then this was September 27th of 2021. This is still in operation. The controversial Republican Black petition drive to restrict voting access in Michigan gained approval on this past Monday. It was the 27th of September, clearing the way for advocates to begin collecting signatures. The Michigan Board of State Canvassers approved the Secure Michigan Vote petition with a 3-0 vote. See, our state legislation is Republican backed. It is red as red can be. We have a governor who is a Democrat, but our houses and Senate, our Congress is led by the Republicans. So they have really the ability to do the things that they want to do. This is why those local elections are so important, because we send those people down to Lansing. And if we don't put the right people in, then you can have a Republican or Democratic governor, but if they don't have the support of Congress so that they can make change happen. We saw that during the pandemic. She was doing things trying to protect those communities protect us as residents, not communities of color, but it really did impact us by allowing people to stay home, allowing for first line offenders to get additional funding, all of these different things, putting up barriers and mask mandates and all of those things. And we saw that what happened when they cannot do it by the legitimacy of their vote, they will do so by force. This is not something that is foreign. You can ask Emmett Till that very question, because he lies in the grave, because what they could not do by election or by legal means, they will do so by force. And I'm not talking about every white person. So please, if you hear me, I'm not preaching hate. I am preaching truth. This is endemic of what has happened in our nation and has continually happened. So we see this 3-0 vote take place. Canvasser Julie Matza, a Democrat, was absent from the meeting. The petition is intended to enable Republican state lawmakers to circumvent a veto from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. A peculiarity in Michigan's constitution allows the legislature to bypass the governor and approve a law if more than 340,000 voters, or at least 8% of the total number of votes cast in the last gubernatorial election, sign a petition to create a ballot initiative. This is absolutely ridiculous. What this does, it undermines the power and the philosophy and the thought process of the people. When the government's responsibility is to ensure that what the people think and how they feel and that their agenda is being put into place, this new system, this new 3-0 vote-led petition that is getting ready to be signed, and I'm pretty sure, Rob, that they will gain more than 340,000 votes to try to put this up for a vote. And what it does is it undermines the governor. So if the governor vetoes something, or they don't want the governor to have the power of a veto, they will get the state legislature to vote on it, which they have the votes right now. They'll pass it, and the governor will be absolutely, her hands will be tied. She will have absolutely no power to do what this rogue Congress will be able to put in action. Now, this is the thing that we've got to understand. Your vote, your word, your community leaders, your community organizers need to stay in place, get in place. We can effectively stop this from happening. On the next poll, how do you do that? Because during this next election, you'll use the power of your vote. 2022 is a midterm election. It is, and when we say midterm, it's between the 4 years of the presidency. And in the midterm election are the times and the things that are the agenda that are most specific and most important to the local citizen. These are the things that impact you the most. What are you going to say, Rob?
I can only hold a job for 2 years. And those 2 years can go by very fast, which is why the guy in Georgia, I think it is, Reverend
Warnock. Yes.
Desperately trying to hold on to his seat.
And so it's important. So when we're having these elections, which to us seem like pageantry, and we, elect an Amos O'Neill, or we elect Debbie Dingell, or any of these individuals, it seems like, whoever is these individuals have the ability to pass laws and to block laws that protect our rights, that keep us moving forward in the spirit of democracy, and make sure that your agenda and the Michigan agenda is continually going forward. All right. So volunteers from all over Michigan are excited to hit the ground running and return election integrity to our state. Secure Michigan Vote said in a statement, "The hill we have to climb to achieve our goal is high as it should be, because making law in our state is a serious undertaking that should have broad support. Our team is going to begin collecting signatures over the next 2 weeks. Our goal is to complete the process. We will well before the 100-day deadline." They are energized to make sure that they can change these election laws so that you and I votes won't matter. It's important that we begin to do everything that we can to stay in the know and in the know-how. So we need to make sure, because what will happen, and this is why it's so important, when they begin to bring up these voter IDs and, you have a driver's license, but your driver's license, do you live here? It's not your current driver's license. It's a different location. What do you do then? You can't go out and get a new driver's license within 15 minutes. You have to go through that process. It's an additional thing to make sure that you are now going to be disenfranchised from the vote. So it may seem like a small thing, these simple things. Well, you have to show this, you have to prove this. You came to the drive, you had your driver's license, but you didn't have your your poll cards in order to vote. These are all things that they do to keep us from voting. We've seen this so many times in our quest for vote. It's important that we begin to make sure that we don't allow Michigan to go backwards. If Michigan begins to do that, and Michigan somehow is led in a state that the Republicans are able to make this state just 1% more red than what it is right now, that means that those of you who out there who believe in equality, who believe in the American dream, who believe in equity and inclusiveness as it relates to employment, schools, education, who believe that we should be teaching, you wouldn't stand a chance because your vote will be thrown out of the window.
It's little things, a snowball is not made from one snowflake. It takes several thousand. It's the same thing. It's a little thing that can snowball into something big. Why would pay attention to these small things?
Absolutely. So I really want to urge you guys as we begin to turn the corner on where we currently are as a community. This is talking to the village. I know we want to talk about ARPA. I know we want to talk about, $52 million that is here in the city of Saginaw. And I have my opinions about that $52 million. I'm trying to remain optimistic that that our community will see some things that they desire. My personal opinion is that there's been a plan put in place for the $52 million. How that benefits, and not to say that plan won't be good for the city of Saginaw, but we'll begin to see what these things are. But there are more pressing issues, and what's happening as it relates to our voting rights, protecting those rights, making sure that we're not creating more legalistic and red tape that disenfranchises people from voting are much more important. All right. So I want you guys to make sure that we get out there and we get out the vote. Now, as we look at where we are in this community, there is a lot that is happening. I spoke with a young lady, and that concludes that piece of that. But I spoke with a young lady, and her name is Audrey, and she's opening up a new space. One thing that has been really exciting for me, somebody said, whenever they think about entrepreneurism in the city of Saginaw and Black businesses, myself and there was another young lady, girl, what's in your post? Why am I not remembering your name? I talk to you all the time. But the two of us were two of the people that continually come to mind. Latrice, and you're going to shoot me because I'm not remembering your name. Girl, what's in your post? It's on Facebook under that. But anyways, and they were saying this, and I was kind of like, wow, this is exciting. There is a new over on the west side of the bridge, Old Town Saginaw. I was speaking with a young African-American woman who has a desire to put together some spacing for all of those entrepreneurs. We have a lot of people who have t-shirt lines or product lines. Maybe it's your beard butter, your body oils, all of those things. And she is looking to create a space in the old bank that was right there on Court Street. There also was a nightclub there. If I'm not sure, Rob, there was like La Placita restaurant there at one point, and maybe like a gay club. It was a number of different things, but there's a bank that was right there on Court Street, not Court Street, Hamilton Street. Hamilton.
Oh, you're talking about where the old mixed
that's it.
Gay club was.
That's what it is. And so she has those spaces, and she says, listen, I want to create a space where we can get people in our community. If you have these businesses and you want to put your stuff out there, maybe your creations, whatever those things are that you're merchandising, and you can actually create a booth and create an indoor marketplace. Now, I'll tell you, this has been really exciting because I've seen this out. We call it the Swap Me out in LA when we were out there, but it was a fun place. It was a place where people like to go because you could always find something new and unique. I want to, so shout out to her. It's coming soon. There's chicken fries coming out that way. So many things that are happening in the city. I hope you guys are encouraged. Let's stay cool. Let's stay tuned. Let's stay connected. Let's get out and let's make sure we're keeping our ears to the ground as it relates to our voting rights, because we cannot lose those rights. I want to thank you guys for tuning in again for another session and conversation, a straight talk with Kareem Bowen. No chaser, no filter, getting straight to the heart of the matter. Have a great weekend. God bless you all. Stop.